Good evening, everyone, and greetings from Melbourne, Australia. It's my pleasure to be with you tonight, albeit over video. I will start with why aid. Aid originated from the principles of humanity and solidarity. It is for those less fortunate have the right to receive, and those who are more fortunate have the obligation to provide. It's impartial and it's neutral. So one key question to keep in mind as we proceed is what is the UK merger trying to solve? Is it efficiency? Now, the Australian experience has shown us that departmental efficiency does not necessarily mean aid efficiency. On the contrary, what we have seen is a decline in the ODA and efficiency being impacted immediately after the merger. Now, there were several reasons for that. One is that there was no prior assessments and consultations done with AusAid. There was a lack of appreciation to the technical expertise AusAid brought in managing aid programs. This has resulted in the loss of talent across AusAid in Australia as well as abroad. There was also an impact on the communication between the government, DFAT, and the Australian civil societies and NGOs. It took years to rebuild and establish trust, rebuild the relationship, and establish a common understanding on aid. We've also seen a preference to bring in the private sector in the aid space, whether it was the Ebola response in 2014 or the Mosul one in 2016. Now, these companies were not subjected to the same accountability measures that otherwise agencies would have been. So if efficiency is the issue, then accountability should be a key action. So recommendation around that could be for UK to establish an external advisory committee to oversee the merger and ensure the objectives are met. Bringing in experts from Australia and Canada can be an option. The second thing I'd like to highlight is the alignment of aid with security and national interest automatically undermines the principles and values of aid. There are two dimensions. Internally, with the foreign policy and security, there are far more players in the space. What we have seen is that DFAT's budget remained the same, and they've recently just gone staffing undercuts, while others have grown quite considerably in budget and staffing. What we've also seen is that with alignment with national interest, livelihood programs in the Middle East are not being implemented by DFAT, but are rather by Home Affairs. On the external dimension, one thing to keep in mind is that when a major power leaves the aid space, it gives the opportunity for another power to move in with their own mechanisms. This is what Australia is grappling with, the rising geopolitical tensions in the Indo-Pacific. With the shift of Australia to the immediate region, it came at the expense of people in need in Africa and the Middle East, and to some lesser extent in Asia and Southeast Asia. What that meant is that Australia has lost its soft diplomacy and influence, for example, on the ASEAN table. Even so, with the focus on the Pacific, the alignment with trade, it meant that it was more focused on infrastructure and less so on the social and economic well-being of vulnerable people. And that too created the opportunity for other powers to move into the Pacific, hence the rising tensions in the region. This is a trend that UK seems to be following, with redirecting the aid to Eastern Europe, with the UK Prime Minister's recent announcement on stepping up support for the Ukraine, and whether that will come at the expense of other regions. So 3 questions I would like to leave you with before I conclude. One is with the worst pandemic that we're going through right now, we will have the worst food crisis unfolding. How will this department address it, and what will it do differently to ensure that poverty is eradicated and aid is delivered based on needs? The second question is around Yemen. With one arm of the department selling arms into Yemen, what would be the moral compass that this department will use to decide on remedial humanitarian action and reduce the suffering of people in Yemen? And third is the public perception. UK I mean, aid is part of the UK DNA. It is the birthplace of several world-leading, 100-year-old British institutions, NGOs. What is the message that we're sending to the public around aid efficiency, and is the continuous reform of aid system the answer? Thank you very much. I hope you have a fruitful discussion going forward.